For us to be able to start writing the relationship code, we're going to have to create a profile view that allows us to see other users and follow them from that UI. So for that, we're going to start by creating a profile template in the user templates folder. So let's start doing that. So we're going to go to the templates folder, and inside user, we're going to create a new file and we'll call it profile.html. For the first part of the file, I'm going to copy these sections from the login because it's essentially the same, and we want to be able to get that into our profile page. So I'm going to copy the top part and the bottom part here. So we have nice closing divs. So we're going to create a section for the username, and then we'll have 3 section relationship if then blocks. One is going to be related to if we're looking at our own profile, which is the self. The second, not following, if you're not following a user, and the third is if you're following a user. So we're going to create buttons. In the case where we're looking at ourselves, we're going to have an edit profile function that will build afterwards. For the not following, this is the one that we're going to build in this module. We're going to add an action or an endpoint to add a friend. So we're going to put a little plus sign and the text add friend. Finally, for the following, we're just going to leave it as a placeholder, and that means that we already following that user, so we can unfollow them. Okay, so now we're going to work on the profile view endpoint on the user file. So what we're going to be doing here is essentially a route that allows us to see a specific user. So let's do that. So let's start building the endpoint. It's going to be part of the user app as the others, and it's going to be at user/user/username. So the username is going to be a variable that we pass into the function, just like we do with like Flask applications. And this profile is going to return a string or a response. So the first thing we do is we fetch the current DBC connection, database connection, as we did before. And we now get the user that is being passed to that user route on the database and execute that statement. And we're going to store that user in the profile user variable. If the user is not found, that means that we're going to return a 404, and I'm going to use the quart, which is also Flask abort function, but I have to import it here on the top. Perfect. And that will just return a 404 if the user is not found. Next, I'm going to check the relationship. So I'm going to see first if we're looking at our own profile. If that's the case, then I'm going to set relationship to self. Otherwise, I'll look up on the relationship table if the user from user is myself or the user that's logged in, and get the profile of the user that we're visiting. Then we store that on a relationship record. If it's found, it means that the users are following each other. And if it's not, then the relationship is set to not following. So finally, we're going to render the template, and we're going to use the profile HTML page that we just created with the username in the context, as well as the relationship record, which we are which we are looking at in this query. Okay, so we're missing the relationship table import, so we're gonna go ahead and add it on the top of the file. And the other thing that I'm checking is that we have a little squiggly line here in line 129. And it's saying that the function is missing a type annotation, which is correct. So we need to add the username, what the type is. So since that's a string that's being passed from the URL, we'll set it up as a string. I also notice there's another squiggly lines in these forms. This is previous code that we wrote, but I think that the request.form is a coroutine. It's not a dictionary. So for this time, I'm gonna just go ahead and use, or rather delete the type and let the variable infer it. And the same thing with this other squiggly line that we had in the register route. All right, so we have the view working, and let's see how it looks like once we run this. So before you run this, I think we have only one user registered, and it's user Jorge Escobar. So in order for us to see the power of the relationship module, we need to register a new user. But let's see first if it runs as is with my own, or with that user, JOR Escobar. So I'll run the application. So if we visit user JOR Escobar, there you go. We have the profile page working. Now notice that it says add friend. That's because I'm not logged in. So if we log in and then we go back to that endpoint that we just created, it says edit profile. So it's detecting that it's myself. It's like I'm looking at my own profile. But let's go ahead and register a user. So we'll do my brother Luigi. I'll register him. Okay, so now if I see his profile, it says add a friend, and that means that this is working correctly because it's looking up our information and it's not finding a relationship between us. But we can double check that that's the case if we put a stop point in the application. So let's do that in here, and I'm gonna reload the page. So right now it's checking if the user is the same as the user that's logged in. That's not the case. So now it's gonna do that query where it finds the from user is Jorge Escobar and the to user is Luigi, and see if it finds a record. And so it checks, is a record coming up? It's not, then not following is the relationship between the two. So that's working properly, and now we're gonna work on the relationship endpoint to add a friend. So see you there.